Hey, I'm Stephanie Forryan, and it's Tech Talk time.
Tech talk, tech talk,
Time to talk
tech.
tech. Welcome to this edition of my web series on the techniques and technology behind the creative process. May is Microphone Month on my channel, so in keeping with that theme, today I'll be discussing how to avoid unwanted click and pop noises on your vocal recordings. In today's video, I'm going to divide these noises into two groups. The internal ones, so the ones that happen within the body, and the external ones, the ones that happen in the room and have more to do with equipment. Before I begin talking about how to avoid the internal clicks and pops, I'd like to thank my viewer Bark Up a Tree for asking this question because you're the reason this is getting made. So thanks for the questions, keep them coming. So now, onto the internal clicks and pops. Every time we speak, we're making a whole lot of noise that we're completely unaware of. We just tune it out because we hear it all the time. However, we become painfully aware of it when we're doing vocal recordings. I like to call these noises smile noises because we tend to make them when we smile. So I'm going to pick up the microphone and I'm going to smile into it so that you can hear what I'm talking about. Did you hear that little snap, crackle, pop noise? Yeah, that was my spit. I know, it sounds really gross when I put it that way. However, that's the reality of it. And so, if we want to avoid these noises, we're going to have to do something about the lubrication situation in our mouths. One way of making sure that everything stays balanced is to simply stay hydrated. It's a good tip for being a human being. It's a great tip for being a vocalist. And it's good to be hydrated all the time because you don't necessarily know when your next recording session is going to be. The next thing you can do is make sure that you keep some water with you in the studio so that you can flush out your mouth if you notice that you're having any click and pop issues. If I find that I'm having a clicky poppy day in the studio, what I'll do is make sure that I have some warm or hot water with me, and I will simply swish it around my mouth in between takes and make sure that the moisture situation stays balanced that way. When I do that, I make sure that it gets in between my gums and my lips and in all the little crevices in my mouth, and that way I can really be sure that I'm not going to have too many issues. I personally would recommend using warm water or hot water. The coolest water that I would suggest is room temperature water, and the reason for that is because you want to keep the system balanced. Your instrument is your body, and you don't want to give it a shock by throwing cold water at it. Now, that's just my personal recommendation from experience. However, every single person's body is different, reacts to temperature differently, so experiment with what's best for you. The other thing to keep in mind is you don't want to use carbonated beverages for this. It's generally not a good idea to drink carbonated beverages before or during a recording session, simply because those little bubbles can make noises in the esophagus, and they can of course also cause you to burp. The last tip for avoiding the internal clicks and pops is a bit of a technique, and basically it's to get your face into position before you begin recording a phrase and then hold it slightly after you've finished recording the phrase. I think this is most easily demonstrated with an example. So in the first take that I'll show you, I'm just going to sing it like I normally would. In the second take, I'm going to get into position, then sing, hold the position, and then go back to normal. So you can see the difference. So take number one. This land is your land, this land is my land. Take two. This land is your land, this land is my land. And as you can see, I opened my mouth, got it into position, made sure some of the clicky poppy noises might have been gone before I even started singing the phrase. What this does is essentially pushes any of the potential clicks and pops that happen when you open or close your mouth to before the crucial part of your recording, and this makes it much easier to cut them out. So let's move on to the external clicks and pops. One of the biggest sources of these is actually the clothing we wear. If you wear dangly jewelry or clothing with zippers or snaps or buttons, or if you happen to wear squeaky sneakers or clicky clacky shoes, all of those things have the potential to make noise in the studio. Even if you are being exceptionally careful, one thing a lot of people forget is that when you have a set of studio headphones, you have this cable hanging down, and this cable has the potential to bump up against zippers and buttons. And although it seems like it would be a very subtle, quiet noise, you'd be amazed at how that stuff gets picked up by a microphone. Another source of clicks and pops is actually the headphones themselves. Most professional studio headphones have joints on them to make them more comfortable to wear and to make sure that they fit your head. However, I'm going to put this up next to the microphone and move it just a little bit. They also make noises. Once the headphones are on my head and settled, they don't really make much noise. However, what I have noticed is that when I initially begin recording and I put my head and face into the right position, a lot of times they'll kind of settle finally onto my head with one final clack. And a lot of times that'll happen in the first or second word. That problem is very easy to solve by doing something that I already talked about, which is getting your face into position before you begin recording the phrase. So if I get my face into position, the headphones are going to settle before I actually begin singing, and then the noise is fine. It doesn't happen the rest of the recording. And of course, I couldn't make a click and pop video without talking about plosives. What are plosives? It's basically anytime you have a consonant that's a stop, which stops the air and then lets it out kind of explosively. So any consonant like P or B or T or D or even sometimes K and G. When that air comes flowing back out, if that hits the membrane, it makes a very unpleasant noise. And I'll demonstrate that now by doing it into the microphone. Unpleasant. However, stops are not the only problem. Sounds like W and Y can also actually cause a problem because a lot of singers tend to exhale on those sounds. And if you do, then you get kind of a wind noise going into the membrane. So how do you avoid these pop and wind noises? Well, one way is through technique. If you use support when you sing, so, prop or breath control, that's going to help a lot because it's going to naturally reduce the amount of air that's coming through at any given time. So that's not only going to give you better vocals, it's also going to help reduce those plosive noises. Now, you could have the best vocal technique in the world and yet still have issues with plosives. And that's because that's the nature of the beast. If you say the letter P, you automatically have to eject air. And if that air hits the membrane, you're going to get a pop noise. So even if you have great vocal technique, how can you reduce this? Well, one way is to step back from the microphone. However, you do want to stay in the microphone's sweet spot. If you don't know how to do that, I've made another video on that, which I'll link in the description, and I will also put it in the cards. But as long as you're in the microphone's sweet spot, you can take a step back and see if that helps. Another thing that I've done in the past to reduce these plosive sounds is to simply look down on the plosive, and that looks like this. Everyone but you. And the reason I look down is because the sound of my voice doesn't come just from my mouth, but it actually resonates through my face. So if I look down, I'm forcing the air to go somewhere other than the membrane. However, the resonance is still directed towards the microphone. So the quality of my vocals isn't going to change. Now, if I were to instead turn my head to the side to do that, what happens is sometimes it can change the frequencies that the microphone hears because you're actually changing the direction of the resonance. Now, you could have the best technique in the world and still deal with pops, and that's okay because there's technology for you that can help. Some microphones come with a built-in pop screen. The Aston Origin microphone, for example, it has a steel wool mesh inside of it. That mesh serves to dissipate the air so that it doesn't hit the membrane with that pop sound. Other microphones come with a different solution. This is the Rode NT5. It's a small membrane microphone, and it comes with this little foam thing that you can just put over the top, and that also serves to dissipate the air so that it doesn't hit the membrane. Now, for those of you who already have microphones and they don't have a built-in pop screen and you don't feel like buying a little foamy thing, you could potentially make your own with a coat hanger and some pantyhose. I have borrowed one from a colleague of mine. It looks like this. It's a plastic frame. It's got nylon over here, and when you sing through it, then it dissipates the sound. It's got a gooseneck arm here so that you can adjust it perfectly to sit in front of the mic, and then it clamps onto the microphone stand with this clamp here. And that's it for this Snap, Crackle, and Pop video. If you have any questions about what I talked about today, please let me know in the comments, and if you have any other questions you'd like me to address, let me know. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful week, and that I'll see you soon for some more Tech Talk time.